Namaskar, Nileshok. Another session of Dr. No Shorts, and this would be number 19. Now, the occasion for this session is a recent paper that came out in last 10 days or so in the journal, The Frontiers in Plant Science. And this is this paper here. And my subtitle, you can say, or the main title rather, is The Antiquity of Cotton and Indian Civilization. I'm doing this under Dr. No Shorts, so I will keep it as compact as possible. If there is additional interest, then I will do a longer session in Shraddha and Prajna series. But this would be a quick highlight and to bring the salient points related to this article. And again, a typical hoopla that is being created. First of all, I mean, great paper. Okay, it's an additional corroborative evidence for what we already know or what we already seem to know, with immense multidisciplinary evidence that is popping up for last 100 plus years from all over the world. And it really remains for few people with scientific acumen, logical reasoning, integrity, and having that samyak attitude to connect the dots. So definitely a good paper. But if you look at in the social media, I think somebody made me aware of this paper this morning. I mean, less than, I don't know what time it is. So say less than 12 hours. And what this paper is referring to is that the earliest cotton fibers and the pan-regional contacts in the Near East. The pan-regional refers to a contact between, say, the eastern portion of Mediterranean. Think of this as Israel, Jordan, Syria, that area, and a material that appears to be imported from India, okay? Or if not imported, definitely the original crop seeds possibly that went from India to this part of the world. Now, what is it that makes them think this must be an import? Because when they're thinking of the timing and the weather conditions, and if there is any evidence of cotton being grown in that region. Okay, so based on that, there is some uncertainty in the author's minds, and that could be it. But as far as the newness of this evidence, I want to make a comment, and that's my actual objective. Yes, we should be excited anytime a new study comes out. It either tells us something totally new that we were not aware of, or many times, and this is equally valuable, not as much, but relatively speaking, it's still valuable because the evidence is scant, is that something that doesn't tell us anything new, but corroborates what we already know. I would say this particular paper and the evidence definitely welcome, useful. It is corroborative rather than saying something new that we don't know. But if you look at the social media and the post, that usually you will get the feeling, the sense of it, is that as if, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, come on, what an exciting research. And something new. I mean, something new. Well, it's not, but it's definitely useful, welcome, and corroborative. So let's get into this. This is a quick scenario. So right now, where it is, for example, the place where this particular cotton evidence was found is right on the Mediterranean, eastern part of Mediterranean. Think of as Israel, Jordan, and that would help you. In terms of its geographical location, that's the Desha, okay? And then we will look at the kala and the context. Okay, desha kala patra. That is the context. Okay, so what timing we are looking at this? Okay, so if you look at this particular evidence that they are listing this as a non-indigenous plant, non-indigenous to the Eastern Mediterranean. But there are a couple of reasons for it. I mean, Israel has done some magic with agriculture, okay? And practically, almost like, practically, I said, they can almost grow anything they would like to. That's the kind of amazing improvement they have made in agriculture. But we are talking of a time in history, in the past. And so therefore also they are mentioning it as a non-indigenous plant. In addition, you will see cotton being grown a lot into Egypt, more in Egypt, but not so much in the upper parts. Okay, although now, as you may know, now meaning for many last few centuries, the cotton was grown in America also. In many other parts of the world, the colonialists took these samples from, say, India, Egypt, China, wherever, to these other parts. So the important aspect of this paper is that the evidence that they have found in this particular area, what is that? Again, Eastern Mediterranean, like Israel, Jordan area. The evidence is of a non-indigenous plant, that particular cotton variety. Okay. Now, those of you who know, the Gossypium arboretum is an Indian variety of cotton, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but still keep it short. Okay. And so they're possibly saying, hey, this could be the Indian variety, or they have found that this is an Indian variety. I don't know how you do that. By the way, the paper is also important for a reason that, in spite of the scant evidence for cotton or fiber that is used to make clothing is been found around the world going into deep antiquity, in spite of how many people must be wearing all these clothes, the fiber doesn't last long. It's organic in nature and it doesn't last long. So anytime you find a cotton fiber or fiber of any kind that is in some fashion used in human applications, either clothing or, say, garland or jewelry, it becomes very important. So in that sense, definitely this discovery is also important. Now, just notice something, okay? Now, I don't remember if I pulled this from this paper. I would like to think, but if not, then another paper. In any case, see, this is not a surprise, guys, okay? As far as the cotton, so therefore, when I read the conclusion of this paper, it surprised me a bit. Assuming I pulled this from the same paper, or it could be one of the cross-reference paper in this paper. So there are studies before, for example, like going back like 20 years, like 2002. And the cotton fiber that threads were found, used to string copper beads. They were found in Mehrgarh, which is now in Balochistan. And they were dated to 6,000 to 5,500 BCE. Now, does that give you a deja vu, guys? The Mahabharata times, Now, that is not to, now is immediately, I think tomorrow there should be a news on all Indian TV channels and Indian newspapers. Actually, there should be, but I bet there will be not such a news, because everyone is stuck into like 1,000 BC, 2,000 BC, 3,000 BC for Mahabharata. But otherwise, they should say like a Mahabharata evidence, 5,500 BC. But that's what it is. It is well established, the cotton agriculture in India. Remember, Balochistan is India, or was India, okay, going back to 6th millennium BC. So that's not a surprise. Okay. Now, then they start talking about when actually it was domesticated and so on. Okay. Like Fuller, I think Christian Fuller, if I remember the name, or Dorian Fuller, forgive me. I think at Cambridge, I mean, she has done a lot of, she and her research group has done a lot of work related to the domestication of crops and stuff like that. And a very impressive research, although I always don't agree with the dates. Now, when I say I don't agree with the dates, like something is found and something is carbon dated, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. But based on that evidence, the way they draw the inferences for the origin of domestication, that's where I disagree, because there is a contrary evidence which is much more solid, much more empirical, and that tells you another story. I'll give you a brief hint of that. Okay. But this is also important point. Like place I grew up, and I'll talk about mango, the mango fruits. These days, the region where I grew up, the west coast of India, it has this Alfonso mango, or in the local, we call it hapus. It is very popular, and now everyone tends to just plant those trees. Okay. Now, if you look at the seed of Alfonso or Alfonso mango, you'll find it's kind of flattened and thinner. On the other hand, if you look at the wide variety of mangoes that are grown and that were especially grown when I was young, I remember just a wide variety of them. We call them rival. I don't know what the origin of that word is, but it means sort of a wild variety. Amazingly tasty. I mean, we just would have a very specific name to a very specific tree. Now go think about that, as opposed to the monoculture now of Alfonso mangoes. So my point is, it doesn't have to be a domesticated in the way it is found in the evidence, that the way people do the research now. They can be totally wild and in some sense domesticated, as to domesticated in the sense that they're still planted without any intervention, or sort of naturally they are growing in such a huge quantity that there is no reason to consciously plant them. Okay. And those are the kind of places where I grew, so just where I grew up, like around that, there would be like 30-40 different trees with a very specific name. And I remember even just growing up, we would keep track of who could be the son and daughter of another tree, because the mango would be similar in taste but not identical. And you will understand why they are not identical. Goes back to genetics. Anyways, so unless if you are confused, the key points here is that what they found there on the eastern part of Mediterranean was a non-indigenous plant. It is connected with the Indians, non-indigenous only in the sense that it's a non-local, okay? Because the Indian word goes everywhere in the indigenous, whereas the variety appears to have come from India. And I just then wonder what's a surprise, because there are additional evidence, not a new evidence, going back 20 plus years, basically showing that the cotton fiber threads were in use. Now, wild or domestic, I don't think it's a big issue. That's why I gave you the example of a mango tree. And going back to 6,000, 5,000 BC, the 6-7 millennium BCE in India. Okay. Now, the place that they looked at, that same place, I don't even know how to say it, Tel Saf, or Saf, something like this. That place, there are other studies, and they have determined, including this study, by the way, that they have dated very well to middle of 6th millennium BC, very much the Mahabharata times. Now, we don't have to talk about Mahabharata here, but again, there are many who ask me the question, so hey, if Mahabharata was such a great deal, and it looks like a very sophisticated civilization, how come there was nothing else happening in any other parts of the world? Well, first thing, that's a very false statement. Now, why such a false, wrong statement is made? Because people are lazy, they don't read, and they don't research on their own. They look for spoon feeding. That is the problem. If you look for evidence, I'm going to share some today, but not a lot. You will find the evidence exists everywhere around the world. I mean, look at this same series, Dr. No Shorts, or also Shraddha and Pradnya. So yes, the dating is indeed goes to you can think of this as a post Mahabharata, after 5561 BC, but that's so in case people ask, so where is that? Well, it's here. And this is archaeology, okay, for those who cannot, okay, extend, pull, push, stretch their brain beyond dirt archaeology. This is dirt archaeology, okay? Hey, be my guest. All right. So yes, the dating indeed is around Mahabharata times, post-Mahabharata times, and pre-Mahabharata times too. Okay. So that's been done. Now, yeah, just to give you an example of a pre-Mahabharata times, imagine these areas which were not that, uh, from a climate perspective, not that hospitable when you go back to the 6th and 7th millennium BC in comparison to India. Guess what? A thriving culture there. And by the way, this is referring to the 6th and 7th millennium BC. But again, I wonder, what do exactly archaeologists spend their time on? I mean, I'm not talking of all archaeologists. There are great archaeologists that you can count on the fingers of your one or two hands. But even when in the social media, I will make mention some point and somebody says, but what was there? And mostly these, Indian folks. And I said, what do you mean? Have you heard of Natufian culture in the Mediterranean? And says, oh, I'm archaeologist. Well, okay, but you haven't done your studies. Natufian culture that was excavated, I like to think about 100 years ago, like 1920s, 1930s. That is dated to Ramayana times, 12,000 BCE and 13,000, 14,000, 15,000 BC. Pre-Ramayana, at the Ramayana times, post-Ramayana times. And if you're looking at here, this is Mahabharata times. Guys, there were civilizations, there were thriving civilizations. I mean, civilization is a wrong word. There were thriving communities, other places outside India had wonderful human presence. Okay, so those who keep on asking this question, it's a recurring, tiring, irritating question. So what was happening in other parts of the world when Ramayana and Mahabharata are happening? Or how come there was nothing happening? Well, what was happening? Well, all of these things were happening. How come there was nothing happening? Well, you are wrong. That's a very wrong question. Okay, you have a faulty information. Okay, let's go further. So yes, these people were storing grains, and of course, these are some of the artistic drawings based on the information evidence they have found. But yes, it's a thriving community in locations which we would consider, or based on even climatology evidence, we would consider not very friendly for a comfortable human living. Okay, but they were there. All right. And this is, again, if you look into the genetics, look at the Yamanya migration, but even the migrations before that, there is a cow migration, the Zebu cows going to the west, the timings matches, post Mahabharata migrations, post 6th millennium migration, which is post Mahabharata migrations. You can connect with that, with the cows, with the human beings, the gene, okay, the gene pool, the X chromosomes, the Y chromosomes, and many others. Like, I mean, guys, all it takes is for someone to start doing the research, pull the data, do tapasya, connect the dots. Okay, you'll be amazed how much data is out there. Okay, so back to this. Okay, so they are storing the stuff, and that all sophisticated lifestyle exists. Quickly, I'm taking you to the summary of this paper. So what they say is, okay, nevertheless, if some of these cotton fibers that they found and dated to 5,200 BCE to 4,700 BC, so that's just after, as far as the dating is concerned, just after the Mahabharata times. Now, jokingly, I was talking to someone and I said, look, now from this paper, they find the evidence, they meaning our interesting Indian researchers, they will look at the date and say 5,200 BCE, when a cotton fiber was found with Indian variety. And they will say, okay, so therefore, that means, Nilesh, if you're claiming Mahabharata war in 5561 BCE, but this date only goes to 5200 BCE, so the Mahabharata folks were not wearing any cotton clothes. Okay, that is how foolish, how idiotic inferences are drawn based on empirical data. The data that we found What Darshana says, we can only talk of the evidence that we have. We cannot talk of the evidence we do not have. We can only draw anuman, conjectures. Okay, we can draw inferences. So 5200 BC, yeah, we have it. But does that mean like 300 years before that it did not exist? I mean, we don't have evidence, but Viveka Buddhi can be applied to say that, yeah, it's quite possible that it would be there. In fact, we have now evidence. So therefore, we know that it did exist. And this becomes a corroborative evidence. But if people foolishly interpret a identification of some evidence as the invention of a cotton fiber or invention of a cotton fiber in some clothing, then we have a problem. And we have many researchers who unfortunately draw those kind of foolish inferences. So I'm just bringing it up. Even you see some hint of that here. Okay. Nevertheless, if some of these cotton fibers were of textiles or strings originated in Indus Valley during the early 5th millennium BC, that's referring to 5200 BC, 4700 BC, one would have to ask if the timing of cotton domestication in its source, by source they mean India, may have been earlier than the 3rd millennium BC as previously suggested. Thankfully, they got that right. So they are saying whoever thinks 3000 BC is when cotton started in India, like cotton cultivation in a methodical agriculture fashion started in India, that doesn't seem to be correct, again, based on this evidence. But they are also pointing out that they are not the first one. There are studies before which have pointed to the cultivation or agriculture of cotton in India long before 3000 BC. So why is this a discussion point? Because you know what, in all the Western models or even their lackeys in India or bozos in India, who will simply just copy paste, they're saying, okay, it has to come from the Levant, which is like Iraq, Mesopotamia. And so if you don't find anything there before 3000 BC, how can that be in India? That's the kind of stupidity that is being used in drawing these inferences. You know, guys, this is laughable, but it happens as a mainstream stuff in academia. Okay, I'm seeing that. Anyways, so these guys are at least, they have done it. Say, hey, just like other studies have also shown, we also like to point out that definitely, or it appears, this is the language of a science, okay, a conservative language. It appears that the origin of cotton definitely goes back, and they say now definitely goes back to 5th millennium BC or early 5th millennium BC or late 6th millennium BC. They're going by that 5200, 4700 BC. What is the point of this? Because definitely now there is a evidence, evidence of Indian cotton going all the way to Mediterranean. Okay, so great evidence, but again, I sometimes wonder, like somebody called me, 10 people sent me this and excited and, oh yeah, this is amazing. I say, yeah, it is amazing, but why are you surprised? Okay, this is a great evidence. This is an additional corroborative evidence, but there is nothing to be surprised about it. There is enough evidence before if you are following this, if you are studying this. Okay, all right. And then the quick point they make, which I already said it, using the example of wild mangoes versus Alfonso mangoes, so I will not repeat, or if wild cotton products were more prevalent than previously thought. I don't know what was that previous thought. I would encourage people to watch many documentaries about what they will describe in anthropology as tribes around the world, either in Papua New Guinea or Amazonian jungles. And you'll be amazed how these societies who were not in contact with the rest of the world until like say 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, were living a very sophisticated life with, as it related to clothing, with containers, building houses, and very sophisticated things. Okay, and so say for example, Zoe tribes of Amazon. Do watch this. Okay, what we use the word Volcalo, as we see in the Ramayana, and how sophisticated clothing they were doing with literally no external technology reaching them. Very, very ingenious ways of doing it. So yes, if they're saying a wild cotton products, yeah, I mean, guys, I'm talking of as far as the mango goes, okay? I'm talking of last 20, 30 years. And suddenly there are huge changes now, unfortunate in some many ways, unfortunate. But this wild variety we group together under rival. This is my limited knowledge, that's the word only I know. But amazing. And I mean, so whether you actually planted the seed or the atmosphere is such, climate is such that they just grew around you, sometimes you have to contain them. I don't know how many of you know that, but I mean, why would you know? But the place I grew up, the pineapple, of course it was planted, but then it used to grow so wild that sometime, can you imagine, we had to contain the pineapple. Like sometimes you just take out pineapples from some areas and clear it off because it was just kind of growing like wild. Okay, so it was originally planted, but then it was growing like wild. So I'm saying, depending on the climate, depending on the land and so on, there may be a different type of agriculture required. I mean, sometimes all you have to do is harvest and not worry about even planting. And it's very important to realize that. In fact, evidence of harvesting of such kind in India or the Indian subcontinent, because this specific evidence comes from Sri Lanka, goes back to 43,000 BCE for food grains. Okay. So harvesting evidence is there. It's just not very clear whether that was a wild plantation or people were actually doing a meticulous agriculture. If it is naturally available, people may not need to do it. I can tell you from my mango experience of my childhood. Okay. So anyways, so that's that. So good paper. This is the conclusion part of that paper. But I wanted to pull something from Wikipedia to show that before this, actually, there is a reference. Before this paper came, which is what, 10 days ago? And you can go and look at this reference number 12, which refers to the latest archaeological discovery in Meerut, puts the dating of early cotton cultivation and the use of cotton to 5000 BC. And this paper does not refer to the paper that I just showed that came 10 days ago. So it's a well-known thing. Actually, there are papers that I have seen, now I don't have them handy, going back to 7000 BC. Okay, in any case. And yeah. Now look at that funny statement after that. Okay, so the cotton is there, all that is there. But then you again see here one line which says cotton was mentioned in Hindu hymns in 1500 BC. Now that is utter nonsense. Now which part is utter nonsense? Oh, that the cotton was not mentioned in Hindu hymns? No, I don't mean that. The cotton is mentioned in many ancient Indian narratives, but the timing of it, the timestamp of it as 1500 BCE. Guys, if you are not only studying, but internalizing, comprehending, and putting this together in your brain in a proper fashion, just like the books are organized in the library, you should be able to immediately say why this nonsensical statement is written there. I mean, and then you can quickly go to the reference number 9 if required. I don't know what it is. But can anyone take a guess? I'm going to give you the answer. But see if when you watch this video, if you can take a guess before I give the answer. Cotton was mentioned in Hindu hymns in 1500 BC. That is that utter stupidity of Aryan invasion theory and the corresponding or coincident other stupidity of therefore claiming Rigveda was written in 1500 BC. So while a scientific, empirical, logical research is coming in and changing our thinking, okay, those people who cannot think beyond the reductionist archaeology or dirt archaeology thinking, it is even expanding their horizons, assuming they are willing to understand it. But right in the middle, a dogmatic, idiotic statement such as this statement based on utterly stupid idea and a decisively falsified claim such as this stupidity of Aryan invasion or Rigveda being composed, written in 1500 BC. These things still survive. And Wikipedia is a master of it. Okay, it will just do it. Now, why these references show up and why the other references don't show up, you can just actually do as a fun study. You will find these references, so 9, 12, 13, whatever, 16, 14 that you're seeing, you will find most of these are coming from either Western academia. Okay, those are universities, so that has to be like Harvard, Oxford, and Cambridge and stuff like that, Berkeley and whatnot. Or you will find the evidence coming from non-Western academia, which is very have a good relationship, comfortable relationship with Western academia. Then only those references are selected, used in edits, accepted in Wikipedia. So I'm using Wikipedia. So I'm saying, guys, it's not like you don't use Wikipedia, but you have to have the Viveka, Pramana, and a Shraddha, all three together, not just blind Shraddha, when you are looking at Wikipedia. So one such statement, if you are not careful, and I see that when people write papers, there, by the way, there are some 10 plus great young researchers. Okay, they are like in their high school and colleges. They are presenting at the Waves 2022 conference that begins like in a day or two. Amazing papers they have done. So definitely attend those conferences. I mean, those conference sessions. Okay, all right. And if you look at below, notice now ancient Greek times, which is what? Only 2,500 years ago. Therefore, because nothing can exist, nothing intellectual can exist before Greeks, okay, in a Western academic mind or Western dogmatic mind. And therefore, Panini is also 2,500 years because they cannot put him too far after. Okay, they're stuck. So, but still 2,500 because he cannot be before Greek wisdom. Okay, there is zilch, zero evidence for showing that Panini was 2,500 years ago. We actually, at least I'm not aware, and I'm very happy if anybody brings the evidence to say when Panini exactly existed. All we can say, and that with 110% confidence, that Panini is definitely after 5561 BCE, that is post Mahabharata, because he does use in explaining his rules like the sutra, he does use many Mahabharata characters, okay, to use it as a drishtanta to make a point. So we know that it's definitely after 5561 BC. But quickly, so the Greek historian like Herodotus, for example, mentions Indian cotton in the 5th century BC as a wool exceeding in beauty and goodness that of sheep, which suggests that the fiber was not yet known in Greece at the time. I'm not so sure. Okay, maybe Herodotus did not know it. I'm going to actually show you some other evidence, okay, in a minute that will say that actually it was known. Because you think of it right now, guys, I mean, the Israel Jordan is not that far from Greece, okay? And if they knew it, Indian fiber in 6th millennium BC, timing of Mahabharata, why would Greeks not know it before 5th century BC? So that conclusion again is wrong. Just because Herodotus says something about this, it describes Indian cotton as, you know, a wool exceeding in beauty and goodness that of sheep. Therefore, to conclude that therefore the fiber was not yet known in Greece is not logical, guys. Okay. Okay. Next, now this is funny. When Alexander the Great invaded India, his troops started wearing cotton clothes that were more comfortable than their previous woolen ones. And, you know, this could be very well true, reference number 15, but I would like to see the evidence of that. Guys, you start looking for the archaeological evidence of Alexander and there is none. Okay. Sometime this, some self-made historian, I forgot his name, I asked him, he has reviewed my book on YouTube and whatnot. I asked him, and then we got into some interesting discussion about the archaeology evidence, Alexander. I said, and he's saying, oh, there is archaeology evidence for Alexander. So I said, yeah, please send me where it is. Because I was asserting that there is no archaeology evidence for Alexander. And then he sent me some article or a link, some evidence from Egypt or someplace. And can you imagine the kind of evidence that he was claiming? I mean, that's not his evidence, but he's convinced about that evidence. But he doesn't understand my Mahabharata evidence. He was saying, actually, the link that he sent it shows on the stone like two main, statues. But guess what? Engraved on the stone, but any of their part above west is just not there. So like right from the west below the legs, and as if like two men talking to each other. That's what the evidence is. Okay, when I actually clicked on that link and read through it, possibly found in Egypt, Sudan, wherever. And somebody thought, oh, that must be Alexander talking to somebody else. Okay, guys, that's the kind of fraud that is being concocted. Okay, become familiar. Don't be bozos. Okay. Then next one, Strabo, another Greek historian, mentioned the vividness of Indian fabrics, and Arian told of Indian Arab trade of cotton fabrics in 130 C. So yeah, they talked about this trade. It was a well-established trade. We are talking about the Silk Route, that's going from all the way Greece or wherever, Rome or Spain, all the way to China, right, through Jaisalmer and the Uttarakuru, Uttaramadra. You can call it ancient cotton trade. I mean, it's a clothing at the end of the day, wool, silk, and cotton. Okay, and it is very ancient. I'm going to show you the evidence of that in a minute. So even it is so ancient that even the Mahabharata times, 5000 BC, looks like very recent, guys. How many of you know that? It's there. It's not a new research, guys. It's there. I mean, when I say it's not new research, it's not a 2022 new research. It is there for last 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, even 100 years. Like Natufian culture that was discovered going back to 15,000 BCE, 17,000 years old. Agriculture, a culture that had well-established agriculture going back to 15,000 BCE. I mean, where are these archaeologists? In fact, when I mentioned Natufian to one of the archaeologists, he said, oh, I didn't know he was an archaeologist. He was asking me something about very recent times and not convinced. And I said, have you heard of Natufian? He says, I'm an archaeologist. I said, well, so what's wrong with you? Anyways, let's go further. Okay, so the dating of early cotton cultivation and the use of cotton, is already been mentioned by other publications back to 5000 BCE. This could be what the current authors might be referring to. Okay, so when they made that connection with that place and the fiber that they found coming from India, the place being dated at 6th millennium BC. So they said, hey, there are other studies which are talking of Indian cotton at least as far back as 5000 BCE, the Mahabharata times, and their evidence also points to this. So they could be referring to this paper. I do not know for sure. And I do want to repeat this. A Herodotus praising Indian cotton in 5th century BCE, from that statement to draw a inference, like as the Wikipedia or that reference number 14 is claiming, that apparently suggests the fiber was not yet known in Greece in 5th century BCE or just before that, is utterly ridiculous. You cannot draw such an inference from that statement just because Herodotus is praising the Indian cotton. Okay, and of course, I'll show you a different evidence of that. Quickly, last point. So, but why are folks surprised? I mean, it's great to be excited. It's great to feel, oh, wow, that's great. I have another evidence. But suddenly you're saying, oh my God, I didn't know this. And now, oh, I have to change all my theories. Now, you know what? If you have to change your theory with every new paper, okay, that comes out, guys, stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself, how would you score yourself on scientific acumen, Vijnana Buddhi, logical reasoning, Tarka Shastra, Tantra Yukti? Maybe to be objective, get somebody else. Okay, if required, guys, assuming I have a time, I'm not guaranteeing this, I'm not assuring it. I'll be willing to test you on your scientific acumen and logical reasoning skills. Happy to do it. Okay. I may charge you, okay, if you take too much of my time. But why are the folks surprised? They are surprised because many don't even know how to formulate their theories. Okay, if your theory only goes with the evidence that you have, that you see, then guys, why do you need a theory? Okay, now this, for example, if you take a sample, okay, so if there are, say, 4 members in your family, and you want to know what is the average height of your family. Well, you measure everybody's height. Suppose there are 4 members in the family. Okay, you add those heights divided by 4, you get the number. And now you don't say, well, so how confident you are. No, you have got an exactly confident number on this. It's not an estimate. So why do you need a theory? There is no theory. Suppose if I do it in my family, add everybody's height divided by number of family members, the number I get is the average height for my family. I don't need a theory for it. You need a theory is when you want to use the data to extend the learnings from that data for the unknown area. We call it interpolation or extrapolations. Okay, to predict about something for which we do not have a data, then you need a theory. My point is, if a single new research paper coming out, if every time it forces you to change your theory, change the timeline and so on, stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself, are you capable of doing this business? Okay, so I mean the theory needs to be modified, and in the light of a data you need to modify it, but not the way many people tends to do. So, oh well, I think somebody wrote, oh, it appears now that the trade was going on much earlier than what we thought. Who is this we? I mean, if literally you find some evidence, like say, take this paper, and now this paper says there is a cotton fiber in use at the eastern end of Mediterranean, and the fiber came from India. Okay, so that means there was some kind of exchange or trade going between India and Jordan, Syria, Israel, that areas or folks of that area at the time of Mahabharata war. Understood. But that's not a theory. That's just a simple data is telling you that, guys. Now, based on that, if you want to build a theory, that theory wouldn't just get so easily damaged by another additional paper. Think about it. That's what I mean by, but why are folks so surprised? Let me share something again. Could be from this paper. I think it's from this paper or just another paper, could be cross-reference paper to this. Okay. For example, it says what they have found. They have found the remains of black, gray, turquoise, and pink colored bast fibers, 30,000-year-old deposits in Georgia. No, not the Georgia, the state of Georgia in America, but Georgia just next to Iran, just the west of Caspian Sea. If you go in antiquity, very much a extended part of India, extended part or outskirts of India. Okay, I mean, in Mahabharata war, people have come to fight far away places than Georgia, the country, just think of that. So it's a very, very close to India, especially ancient India, where Iran, Afghanistan, they were all part of India. Or someone like Bhagavad is coming from Iraq, Syria, Turkey, that area. But quickly, notice down. So now this may not be a specific fiber, like specific cotton fiber, whatnot, but now this is getting into the pigments, the dyes. Okay, so black, gray, turquoise, pink colored bast fibers were found. 30,000, don't confuse, I don't mean 3,000, guys, 30,000 years old deposits in Georgia in a cave. Okay, or yeah, this is the cave, by the way, where they found this. Okay, and just so that logically, or not logically, the geographically, where Georgia is. Okay, so this is our current India. You go back beyond 1947, then that's Pakistan gets part of it. You go further back, I mean, not that long ago, say 300 years, like when British finally couldn't get to Afghanistan. So that's the separation line happened. So Afghanistan is part of it. Iran, the name Iran comes from Arya. Okay, the Iranians consider themselves Arya, just like Indians are Arya, and outside there is no word Arya. Okay, so that is very much the Aryas. Okay, and now somebody who has never bothered to read this, oh, so are you saying the Aryan came to India from Iran? Well, guys, I mean, if you do that, then I have to mute you. Okay. So anyways, the place, this cave that I'm showing you here, where they found these fibers dyed in different colors going back to 30,000 years. They are from this area. This is where the Georgia is, just connecting with, see, Azerbaijan is here, and just above that, you can say. Okay. in just north of Iran. But is that a very isolated evidence? Not really. If you go to the eastern part, like, east of India, like beyond Tibet to China, like all the way to eastern part of China, like, yeah, I don't know how to say that, like Shizitan locality, but that's definitely in the North China and further east part of China. A dyed bast and wool fibers. Okay, so now we are talking about the pigments. Okay, have been identified from depositional layers measuring blah blah blah, going back to what, 26,000 to 13,500. Very similar time like what you saw in Georgia. Okay, or relatively recent times. Again, people will say, "Oh, suddenly what happened in Turkey?" Guys, nothing different happened. When we are looking for archaeology evidence, we are at the mercy of nature. We are at the mercy of luck. You know, Pramana tashyartha pratipatte. We can only talk of the evidence that we have. Now, just because the evidence from Turkey is only 10,000 years old or 9,000 years old doesn't mean that somehow it was there in Georgia, somehow it was there in China, somehow it was there in other places. But oh, Turkey only it reached there in 9,400. If you draw such conclusions, it is a very poorly drawn inference. What we found, what somebody found happens to be from 9,400 BP. So about 10,000 years ago. Okay, so that has been found, by the way. So what I did is I took this data, and actually there is more, but just to limit to the time, and this is no longer Dr. No Shorts, it's more like a Shraddha and Pradnya. Therefore, I say, I will just do as it works out. I took those data points. Okay, so here where you see this Israel, that is where Israel, Syria, and this is Jordan. That's where kind of directional area where you found that fiber that is dated to Mahabharata times. Okay, the 6th millennium BC, from the recent paper that came out 10 days ago, around 10th of December 2022. But in that context, either that paper mentions it or some other paper. I even forgot when I started reading. See, my habit is once I start reading a given paper, I don't stop there. Okay, for everything that they are claiming, as a background information, the agama or the shabda in the Nyaya Darshana speak, or Patanjali Yoga Sutra speak, I always like to go back to that cross-reference paper, and I'll go deeper into it, try to access those papers and read many times. And that happened today also because of the subject. I'll not just go there. Something that is claimed in the paper that you are reading, and then you say, oh, wow, that's very interesting. A copper pot, blah, 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 dating to this time, copper pot with, say, Indian fiber. And I said, that's interesting. Let me see what is the dating of it. And so I went for that reference. Then I went to the cross-reference. When I started reading the cross-reference paper, guess what? And I don't know which paper I was reading and which was the cross-reference paper. The cross-reference paper, which was quoted by the, say, first set of authors saying, oh, they refer to a copper bowl with Indian fibers in it. I found that to be very exciting. And the dating was also pretty ancient. But when I went to that paper, the cross-reference paper, there was no mention of copper whatsoever. So I'm saying you have to be very careful. You cannot just take anything at the face value. Anyways, so what I did is maybe from this paper or some of the cross-reference paper, what I showed you on this previous page here, like from China and all the way to Turkey and to Georgia. So those are the points I'm plotting here. Okay, so Turkey, this is the current paper. This is from Georgia. This is from the China area that I mentioned. I put here Jaisalmer, which is considered that it was on the Silk Route. Okay, so therefore I said, Silk Route, fine, but also start thinking about the ancient cotton route, or you can say ancient fiber route, or you can also say ancient, what you call the dyes, or the pigment route. Okay, all these goods were being exchanged. Okay, the business was going on across this very active place. How ancient? We looked at the dates, guys. Okay, 26,000 years and 9,000 years and 30,000 years and so on. Okay, but don't think that it was only through the land, although That's kind of easy for people to imagine, because now our dogma about the invention and sophistication of navigation comes into the picture. Again, if you have not read it, guys, you're going to say, well, okay, well, the Levant, again, the Mesopotamians did it, and then we copy pasted. Okay, or Vasco da Gama came for 500 years ago, and then we started going by boats. That's not true, right? If you have listened to my talks and great work of Professor Ramaswamy, from Tamil Nadu, he has shown Pumpuhar, very sophisticated ports, series of ports, total of 7 ports built over last 20,000 years. Why 7 ports? Because the sea levels were coming up for last 20,000 years. But interestingly, after Mahabharata, after 25 BCE, the sea levels still continue to go up for next 2,000 years. But in the last 4,000, 5,000 years, water levels are actually, at least on the Pumpuhar, we could see, and we see that in the Gujarat too, by the way, Arabian Sea, the water levels for last 4,000, 5,000 years are actually going down. They may be still coming up, guys, but they were going down. And you see the evidence of that. So my point is, the sophisticated navigation existed for 20,000 plus years. Now we just stop at 20,000 because we do not have a evidence before that. That doesn't mean like suddenly navigation began 20,000 years ago or 18,000 years ago. If somebody draws an inference like that, that is also equally foolish inference, just like we looked at some of the inferences here. My point is, yes, the trade was going on the land, but don't forget the trade happening through sea routes. And again, you can read work of Charles Hapgood, like, Ancient Seafarers, that book. Refer to, I don't know exactly which book to tell you guys. Possibly he has not written a book. He might have written few papers and blogs. My good friend Wim Borsboom, okay, from Canada, he has written papers, definitely has written papers, if not blogs, on ancient sea routes, okay, and how many things, culture, different things, goods, even domesticated animals, how they went, not only by the land route, but even also by the ocean routes from India to other parts of the world. Okay, so definitely refer to work of Wim Borsboom, W-I-M, Borsboom, B-O-R-S-B-O-M. Okay, a Dutch last name. Okay, all right. So don't restrict yourself. Again, how our dogma can confuse us, or restrict us. There is a sufficient evidence. He has shown how amazingly, like, some of the connections happened even thousands of years ago with, say, Ireland and so on, so different places, which has a connection with India. He said, yeah, land possible, but there is every reason to believe also. And he has presented some specific evidence, again, refer to work of Wim Borsboom. So therefore, I'm showing, remember, going back to Mahabharata times, that's what we are discussing, 6 millennium BC. Think of Dwarka. Dwarka was Dwaravati, okay, right? What now we think of a Mumbai today. Now, I'm not showing the Mumbai there, by the way, guys, okay, but just like Mumbai as a port. Okay, so yeah, so there was a business going on, commerce going on, not only through land, but also through oceans for 20,000 plus years. If you understand this context, then none of these things these are still very fascinating things to you. We need to still connect a lot of dots for additional evidence, not this evidence. Okay, because if you cannot be convinced of this, not because what I am saying it, then guys, no matter how much more data comes to you, you will always remain pauper, data pauper. Okay, you'll always remain poor because you don't know how to use that data to build it into a model, build it into a theory, and then test those theories. And at some point you say, yeah, this is a robust theory, I'm going to use it for more. Okay, and if required, we can modify that. So there were these routes that I'm showing directly on the land, but actually very likely through ocean. Okay, and that's the importance of Krishna's Dwarka, by the way, guys, 6 millennium BC. Okay, something else. Now, so we talked of Indian cotton being in Israel, Jordan, at the time of Mahabharata. Okay, 6 millennium BCE. The pigments, okay? And now pigments came from all over, like not just India, but Afghanistan, like, the different types of stones and different types of clay. And of course, the indigo plants, I mean, you know that, okay? It's the pigments, that business was there. Going back to what times they're talking, 30,000, 26,000, 5,000, 10,000. It's very important you become comfortable with these numbers. Okay, but so we also I briefly talked about the cow, the zebu cow migration. Don't want to get into that today. The human migrations, the out of India migrations, again, guys, go to Wikipedia, start studying the genetic groups. Be my guest. Be a guest of Wikipedia. There is so much information there, such a wonderful maps. In spite of all the biases of Wikipedia, even because of this open architecture of the internet and everything, even Wikipedia has limits how much they can fudge. Okay, so if you are careful, if you are intelligent, if you are ingenious, Wikipedia, you can find tons of stuff that is useful. But let me also mention, which I have mentioned before, like a domestic mouse migration. So like you saw this picture, just have this picture in your head as I walk you in next 2-3 minutes through domestic mouse migration, starting with India and going to all corners of the world. Okay. So, and again, how did that go? Of course, along the land, with people migrating from India with their cows and with their other things, and agriculture spreading, and therefore the domestic mouse, which is directly connected with agriculture, established agriculture, going there. But also through the boats, okay? Because if you're taking the grains and if you're taking some other goods, food, the domestic mouse would also migrate. And that has happened. That's how they came to Latin America, and then Americas and different parts, Polynesia, and so on. All the domestic mouse, okay, if you do the genetic study and do the coalescence, it comes to India. How's that? Okay, those of you who already know it, great. But those who don't know, be surprised for the first time. If you already know, be surprised for the second time. All right, so I wanted to quickly show this Bonhami paper from 2007, where look at those arrows, okay? This is the world population of domestic mice, okay, mice. And look at the arrow and the direction of the arrow. Everything living from India and going into different parts of the world. What is the significance of it? The domestic mouse is directly connected with agriculture, with established agriculture. And when that agriculture migrated, agriculture doesn't migrate by itself, human beings carrying that, okay? The horizons increasing, expanding, and with that, this domestic mouse going out there, of course, through the land, but of course, through the sea route, through sophisticated navigation. Okay, now what is the timing for this? Actually, a varied timing. Like, for example, this one going to America, or this 42 going to Polynesia, very different time steps. Okay, or going to Madagascar, everything going from India, starting from India, as far as the domestic mouse is concerned. But another paper I want to show you, actually there is a evidence. Therefore, I'm answering why, or I'm responding to why people are suddenly surprised every time they see a new paper. Because the simple answer is they do not read old papers, old research papers. Okay, that is the answer, guys. Because if you would have read, now this paper, yeah, from 2004, this one doesn't give me the year, but I think this is from 2007. This paper from, say, 2004, 2003, 2004, first occurrence of the house mouse, okay, in the Western Mediterranean. In the Western Mediterranean would be this, okay, Eastern Mediterranean would be this. But let me also warn you, although they're saying first occurrence of the house mouse, I want to make a point. I mean, this could be very well real. That could be the first occurrence. But the important point to keep in mind is the oldest evidence of a house mouse that they have found in Mediterranean. Okay, few years down the road, suppose they dig more or different places and they find the domestic mouse is also there, and the time stamped at, say, 20,000 years before, I mean, before present, instead of like 12,000 BC, so only 14,000 years ago. Don't be surprised, guys. Okay, don't be surprised. The evidence that they have found, what is it telling us? Pramana Tashyartha Pratipatte. It is saying, hey, the evidence of a domestic mouse, origin, don't forget, India. Where was it found? It was found in the Western Mediterranean. You know what that area is. Think of this as a southern France, okay, or southeastern France. That's the area we're referring to. Or Eastern Mediterranean is basically where the current research was conducted, okay. Israel, Syria, Turkey, and that area, okay. And what is the timing, guys? 12,000 to 8,500 BC, the timing of Ramayana. And I didn't make this data, guys, okay? I did not make up this data. You can go and read this paper, or phase B, and there are more phases, very recent, phase 3, phase 4, and so on. But phase B, 8,500 to 6,000 BC, that's the Ramayana times, guys. Sorry, that's the Mahabharata times. And evidence of domesticated mouse, Indian mouse, whose origin is India, already there. And they did not fly. Okay, these are out of India migrations before Ramayana, during Ramayana, after Ramayana, before Mahabharata, during Mahabharata, after Mahabharata. Okay, what does that also say? Agriculture, the well-establishment of Indian agriculture that is going out on the land, out through the ocean, through navigation, through land routes, and so on and so forth. We talked about the Silk Route. We talked about the pigmentation route. We talked about the cotton route, all the way from China, all the way to, at least in these studies, to Turkey and to Greece and wherever. Okay, I forgot the dates. I think that's it. Yeah. So just on, this is on the last slide. Like, I don't know how many of you know this. A Vedic sage, his name was Grutsmad. Okay, Grutsmad. And he is, what do you say? He's been attributed with many inventions. Okay, some cool inventions, more on the line of Tantra Yukti. For example, he was in Marathi, it will be like a Vinakar, or Hindi Binakar or Binkar, right? And even the sitar player also is called Binakar, but that's because, there are strings, just like we have a cotton strings, right? Therefore, he's like second mandal of Rigveda, many suttas by him. If I remember correctly, and please don't hold me to it, but I think his suktas are there in the first mandala also. Very ancient sage, by the way, even within the Rigvedic context, and we just don't know how far back to go. So in fact, on the Twitter today, when I saw this article and somebody had tagged me, and thank you to whoever did that. I think it was Indrajal who tagged me. And thank you so much. This particular sage immediately came to my mind, Grutsumad. And I have talked about him before. He made some very ingenious inventions. Now we may think very basic and simple. For example, if we can attribute the origin of multiplication tables, okay, and the effectiveness of knowing the multiplication tables in everyday life, in mathematical calculations and astronomy calculations and construction calculations and agricultural calculations, goes back to him. And just as a demonstration, in a very, you can say, humorous but very serious way, he writes a sukta where he's giving a multiplication table, like 7 times 2 is 14, 14 times 2 is 20, sorry, 14 times 3 is 21, and 7 times 3 is 21, and so on, that kind of thing. So multiplication table, at least as a documented evidence, it comes to us through Grutsmad. He was also a as I say, Vinakar or Binakar, and he's been attributed to have actually grown cotton, but worked with cotton towards its modifications, towards its domestication. And based on, I don't know, and I'm not aware of any archaeology evidence or any astronomy evidence that can Grutsmad saying something in archaeoastronomy science that can be used to date his time. I'm not aware of any, but I know of some great acharyas in India who have commented. I don't know based on what evidence, that Grutzmud was from central India, like near Nagpur. Or those of you who are familiar with different districts in Maharashtra, he's been said that he's from Yavatmal district, or even a specific small town or place is kind of stated as his place called Kalamb, if I'm saying the name right. Okay. So anyway, so what's the connection of him? If you know of a cotton varieties like Gossypium, and there are different varieties, I just showed it before. Okay, Gossypium, like the cotton tree, like Gossypium tree, arboreum or whatever, that is the Indian variety. Again, I don't want to say that India is the only place where cotton began. Actually, more and more, anyone claiming anything began only in one place are very likely going to be wrong. Okay, maybe because of the lack of evidence, that's number one, or you're going to find a multi-place evidence. But that's kind of coming out, for at least based on the limited evidence we have, to be the case, even for human evolution and human modifications and so on and so forth. Same thing for plants, same thing for animals, and so on. In any case, so Grutzmud, he's beyond the multiplication table. He's known for someone who worked with the cotton modifications, cultivation, okay, domestication, agriculture, and so on. To such an extent, I don't know who created this, but and this is not the first time I'm knowing it. I have bought Grutzmud shirt, by the way. But I thought whoever did this, and I tried to find the contact, I mean, in the sense, who has created this line of product, and I couldn't find it. If you come to know, share with me. I mean, I don't want to do anything more with this, but I've thought whoever did it, extremely cool thing, that they have created a brand called Gritsmud. This is for the cotton shirts, and they might have many other cotton clothing into that. I don't know that. So the shirt that you're seeing here, I just typed that. So actually, when Indrajal pinged me, the Gritsmud came to my mind, and just as a starting point of this presentation, I just went to Amazon and or in Google, I just typed Gritsmud. Okay. And because I have seen this shirt before, as I have it, and it came right there. Okay. And of course, the Wikipedia entry, that is what I have posted on the right. But so cool that somebody thought of giving the due credit to this great sage of deep antiquity for his contribution to all of us. We are very well connected with his contribution, the clothing that we wear. And yes, we might be wearing a synthetic clothing today, possibly, but its origin in terms of ingenuity and what can be done with it, okay, goes back to indeed a great sage like Grutzmud. And if you look at the top, that's like a cotton flower, and then the cotton balls that you see afterwards. Okay. So on this note, I would like to stop this. It's not short. Okay, it's 1 hour, 7 minutes. Okay, enjoy. Please write your comments, share and subscribe and all that good stuff. All right, I'll see you shortly in another session of Dr. No Shorts, which may not be short. And for Shraddha and Pradnya, or my Marathi series, Upasana and Abhyas. Namaskar.